What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Monji TV. On today's episode, we're gonna be taking this M Performance trunk off of my manual M2 and putting it on the race car M2. So it's finally time to strip all these lightweight carbon fiber parts off this car and get them on the race car, as they are what we need to continue losing some weight, putting this thing on a diet. So nonetheless, let's get to it. Let's see what we got to do to swap it over. It's actually quite easy install, but nonetheless, let's get this trunk off, and then we'll get the stock trunk off. And then I do have the original trunk for this car. We'll be showing you here. It's in a box and putting the original trunk back on. It's gonna be sad to kind of see this thing go back to stock, but to be honest, the parts are better utilized on the race car. So let's go ahead and do it. So first things first, we're gonna wanna disconnect these, I believe they're T40s or T45 bolts to remove this lock actuator, as well as this cable and stuff that's routed through here. We'll be reinstalling all of those same components from that car on here. So we'll go ahead and get these removed. We do have to kind of slip the wiring harness out through the trunk, which is not too hard. It pulls through this hole pretty easily. So we'll be showing that here in a second. But yeah, let's go ahead and get this lock actuator off and this cable off, and we'll start disconnecting the wiring harness that also goes to like the trunk lights and stuff. We do have to pop these out. Potentially, I'm gonna try to leave them installed and reach my hand back up in here and get them, but it may not be possible. So we'll see here in a second. All right, guys, so since our car's already stripped on the race car, this is actually gonna make things quite a bit easier. We've decided that just disconnecting the body harness to the rear FEM module, or the REM module, which is the rear electronics module. You got one connector here and one here to the sub harness. We've decided is going to be the easiest way to kind of get this trunk off, and then we can dissect this trunk and take everything we need off of it and put it on the original trunk. But nonetheless, that's what we've done here. It's super easy. Got one little seal here to the chassis. We're going to go ahead and disconnect these two 13mm bolts per side, pull this trunk off so that once we get the carbon one off the other car, we can just slap it right on here. And then we'll worry about dissecting all this stuff on both trunks and putting all of the M2 stuff on that car back on the original trunk, and then utilizing all these components for the existing trunk. Nonetheless, super easy install. Those of you guys with interior panels, we'll show you here what we've done. It's very easy. Took us about 5 minutes. We took the center trim panel out. Another thing you want to do is disconnect your battery. There's one T40 up here for a little hook that we removed. A couple little pop clips like this to take the inner panel out. There, if I can grab one. A couple of these guys to take the inner panel out. The little pocket here has come out of the carpet just so that we can move it back. And we've done the same thing here, just disconnecting it from the rear FEM module. So once again, basically same exact thing on this car. We're gonna go ahead and get all of these 13mm bolts removed and throw this trunk on the other car. But before we remove this one, we're gonna go ahead and remove that one. So let's go ahead and do it. All right, guys, so my bad, actually, it's an 11mm bolt that we're gonna be removing for the trunk. You actually only have to remove the front bolt. The top bolt actually just slides right out. So all you gotta do is loosen that, break these loose, spin that up by hand, set these in the trunk. We're just gonna go ahead and loosen this one just slightly. You'll see the trunk has come loose on that side. Do a little bit on this one as well. About yay. So I guess this trunk's coming off, but just for the sake of this this part, we're just gonna leave the bolts in. So from there, you're gonna need a second person. This thing should just slide right up and out. Wiring harness, everything intact. All right, guys, we'll take you over to the other car, and we'll do the same thing. All right, guys, so Morgan's taking out the bottom bolt. Like I said before, we're just gonna loosen the top ones here just ever so slightly. I kind of like to support it when you drop it just so that it doesn't hit the chassis here. Just be careful with that. It shouldn't, but it's good to just, that's it, it's enough. And then loosen this side. I'm gonna have to put the camera down, guys, and I'm probably gonna move back over here so you can see us install it real quick. Same goes for reinstallation, guys. Just watch your harness. We'll go ahead and slide this thing down into place. There it is. Throw our other bolt in. Generally, these things are just gonna land right where they need to be. And you may need a little bit of test fitting, but overall, these trunks fit really, really well. Yeah, so usually what I like to do is just make sure they're basically exactly where they were. Just hold your bottom one right where it was. Top one should basically line up perfectly after that. Before we suck this thing down real hard, we're gonna wanna test fit everything. The other thing is that the hood shocks, or the trunk shocks, have been changed. So we're gonna have to pop these trunk shocks off, as these are, I don't know, they say F22, F23, HKL, I don't know. We'll have to look at what the factory ones say, but these are for a carbon fiber trunk so that they're slightly lighter shocks than the factory shock. So we'll be swapping those over to the other car. But yeah, let's go ahead and get these bad boys off. Okay guys, so the ones that are on this car, I think they say like M4, yeah, F87 HKL, which are the lighter spring shocks that you're gonna want for the carbon fiber trunk. So we're gonna go ahead and pull these off and put the original trunk shocks from this car on. And the way you do that, there's like a little spring clip here at the top. You just pop it out, top and bottom, and then they'll pull right off. Just be careful, these springs are kind of tight and sometimes they like to just straight pop off. And do that, do the bottom one. There it is. So if you have the weight of your trunk on here, it's best to do just one at a time so that the trunk doesn't just fall over. Morgan's getting the original one off, and then we'll be putting the lighter ones on. It's sick seeing it on the race car. It's exactly what this thing needed to really kind of freaking make it look like a race car. Super sick. Next thing is going to be putting on our CS hood. So we're going to quickly get this trunk all fitted nicely, get all the factory parts back on this car, and then next up is going to be this M2 CS full carbon hood. So I think we'll start with the hood. We'll fit all the gaps to the factory fenders and the car. Originally when I did this car, I did the fenders first and then the hood, but I think it's probably about the same thing, doing it one way or the other. It would be like way too much to just go ahead and rip this car apart and put the you know, fenders and hood on at the same time. I think it's wise to do one and then the other so that you can keep the factory gap. So either fit the fenders to the factory hood and then fit the hood to those. But I also struggled when doing that and had to readjust the fenders. So I'm thinking it's smarter to do the hood first and then fit the fenders to the hood, because the hood will be exactly where the OEM hood was and should fit perfectly. So next thing is to swap the hoods, which this hood is just going in the box and the original M2 hood is going back on this car just like the trunk. So yeah, let's get it. It's kind of sad to tear this thing apart, but honestly, all these parts, like I said before, are better suited on this car for the weight reduction purposes, the fact that they actually vent physically through the hood more, and through these fenders. We never made them functional on this car, but on this car I plan to make them functional by cutting out the inner fender and putting some mesh screens in there. So let's go ahead, continue moving on, get this hood off the other car and on this car. So as you can see here, a little pile of parts. Let me show you guys the OEM hood or trunk. These are fenders and a hood right here. We're gonna be unboxing all this stuff. It's been nicely saran wrapped and bubble wrapped for like 3 years now. This stuff came off at like 500 miles, so it's literally like perfect. We're gonna go ahead and unbox this trunk and reassemble it and get it on the car. All right guys, as you can see here, we've unwrapped it. This hood has not seen the light of day for like 3 years, or this trunk, my bad, has not seen the light of day for like 3 years. Looks beautiful. Actually, so clean compared to the other car. The other car is so scratched up. So we will have to paint correct that other car to kind of make it look as nice as this car. But nonetheless, we got the OEM trunk here. We'll get this bad boy installed on the car and then install the components for it. First things first, we gotta find the factory trunk shocks, which I believe maybe in like a box of parts way up there. I'm not totally sure, so we're gonna find those right now, get them installed, and then we will continue moving on. All right guys, so we've gone ahead, got all the interior trim panels popped back in, our little T40 hook there, all the pop clips back in where they go, our little pocket reinstalled, and our under tray, as well as this tray reinstalled. Everything is as it should be. Now we are moving on to the hood. We are gonna be pulling the carbon fiber hood off this car and putting the factory hood back on. Same thing as the trunk. This thing has been off the car since 500 miles. A little dirty, just because I think when I was doing the hood swap, it was raining, but nonetheless, we will be swapping it out for this carbon fiber unit here, which is a factory BMW CS hood. So before we get carried away, let's go ahead and get the old hood off of the race car. We'll set that on the ground, and then we will throw the carbon fiber hood on this car, get it fitted, and then we'll throw the original hood back on the other car and get it fitted. So nonetheless, let's go ahead and remove this hood. There are some 13 mil bolts holding this one on as well. And We do have to change these hood shocks out as well for the GTS ones. We do have some lighter hood shocks that are from an M4 GTS, which we'll be swapping out as well. So we'll go ahead and get that off. We'll also be dropping all the links to all these parts down below, so stay tuned. All right guys, the CS hood, as you guys saw, literally dropped right into place. We just lined up the factory marks, and to be honest, this hood fits like insanely good. We've done no adjusting and it's like almost perfect. If anything, it's just a tinge closer on this driver's side, which could also be due to the fact that I've rolled these fenders and the gaps just aren't factory anymore. Nonetheless, she looks so good. Next step is to pull the fenders and put the Alpha N front fenders on. Super hyped though on seeing all the parts on this car and knowing that all of these parts are going to continue to reduce the weight and really bring this thing down in weight as much as possible and make it perform as good as possible. So super hyped on this. All right guys, I ended up pulling the cars in because it was getting a little late, dark outside, but one of the coolest things about this hood is this always used to rub on the factory hood for some reason. I'm not sure why that is. Hasn't rubbed on any of my other cars, F80 and whatnot, but the M2 hood for whatever reason seemed to rub. But now there's this massive hole cut exactly where we need it to be, so we'll no longer have any rubbing issues, as well as this hood is so much lighter and it fits beautifully. We literally have done zero adjusting. I could probably sit here and fine tune these gaps a little bit, but we're gonna be replacing the fenders anyways. And like I said before, they've been rolled, so who knows kind of how good they are. So right now the hood's basically exactly where factory was. We're just gonna go ahead and pull these fenders off the other car and put them on this car. And then we'll fine tune all the gaps on this car and fine tune all the gaps on this car. But so far so good, everything's looking beautiful. Looks OEM, and I'm really excited to see these fenders on the race car because man does it look good. Obviously we've seen them on this car, but with the stance being lower on this car and also just being the race car with all the, you know, air ducts and tow hooks and whatnot, it really just looks the part now. So really excited to finish this up. We're gonna go ahead and jack the cars up and get the wheels off and start swapping these fenders. Well, these are going in the box and the new fenders are coming out of the box, the original fenders from this car, and going back on the car. You can see here, they're all nicely padded up. So probably gonna cut the video here. Obviously you guys can see the original hood is back on the car. Same with this hood, everything popped on like butter, fits like perfect. There are some tape and residue and dirt from when we packaged it up. It was raining 3 years ago when I put this thing in the box, so it is a little dirty. So we'll go ahead and give that a nice wash. But first things first, we're gonna go ahead and get these Alpha N fenders off the car. So stay tuned. Hopefully you guys like this video. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.